Hello, I'm Devin Rue, a professional fantasy cartographer and illustrator, and you are listening to the Quip and Quill podcast.
Hi, my name is Nala or Jay. My pronouns are they, them, and I am an art director and illustrator working full time in the TTRPG space. Currently, I am the art director for Hunters Entertainment, and we have a Kickstarter currently ongoing by the time this episode will be out for Kids in Capes, and that is the first book that I am art directing for. Um, uh, in my tenure at this company. So super exciting. If you like the Kids on Bikes system and you want to play a game about superheroes, then you should go check that out. I've also previously and or currently are art directing for All the Witches, which is an indie TTRPG game about being a witch, and we are in the tail end stretch of getting this out to all of our backers, and then the game will be available publicly after that. Metal Weave Games, Evil Hat Productions, and lots of other things. And then as an illustrator, you may have seen my work in the Baby Bestiary calendar for this year, so the 2024 calendar from Metal Weave Games. You can still buy it on the website, even though it'll be June by the time this is coming out. You can still buy it for the art. I had a lot of fun making that, and I'm very, very proud of that work. I was also on the Adventuring Artist Tarot deck with Die Hard Dice, and the Any Award-winning Uncaged Goddesses, which is available on DriveThru RPG. Coyote and Crow, among other things, Apocalypse Keys. I've worked on a lot of really cool stuff in my time in the space, and that's super, super cool. But yeah, I do that freelance full time. And then besides art, I am a voice actor, sensitivity consultant, and professional TTRPG actual play stream performer. Probably most well known for Itaewon by Night, which is a Vampire the Masquerade actual play set in Seoul, South Korea. We have an all Asian cast, and we are the first, and I'm pretty sure still the only all Asian cast to play BTM on stream. We have 2 seasons out, so you can go search that up on YouTube. And very proud of that stuff. I'm also on other shows like Last of Eden's Vices, which is also happens to be another Vampire the Masquerade game, where I play the antithesis of my Itaewon by Night character, who is Ventru, girl boss, very calm, cool, collected woman, asterisk, gender not included. But in Last of Eden's Vices, I play a sad, wet cat of a vampire named Erlin, who never wanted to be a vampire in the first place. And I'm pretty sure our finale has aired or will have aired by the time this episode comes out. So all of those VODs are available both in podcast and VOD format over on Goblets and Gaze. And so recommend that for some good VTM as well. And yeah, that's kind of like my actual play stuff. I love a good vampire, and you can view my work online at naladraws.com. I am on Twitter at NalaWoo, and every other social media that I do have as NalaDraws. NalaDraws. I am so good at spelling things out loud. That includes Instagram and TikTok and other sites like that. But that is who the fuck I am.
And that is one of the best responses to that question, because when I ask people normally, so what the listeners don't know is just before we start recording, I do ask, who the fuck are you and what the fuck do you do? So I get an enthusiastic reply. And most times I get like a 5-second response. I was like, let's try that again.
Tell me more. Tell me more.
Right.
Tell me more.
So yeah, no, get it all out in the beginning. So also because it's a great way for people to like, oh wait, now I know who they are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, and I think that a lot of people don't necessarily realize that, like, hey, just telling me your name on Twitter may not tell me who who you are or what you
Yeah.
do.
And people
So, like,
like
yeah.
know of people from the things they do, not necessarily them by name. So I think like having or naming projects you've been a part of helps with association for sure.
Right. Exactly. So, I mean, people may not know my name, but they usually know my maps. So, it helps to kind of state that off the bat, kind of thing. So, I want to talk
Absolutely.
about you doing art direction.
Yeah, of course.
Especially because like so many people who do listen are artists, and we are absolutely talking about the things that we love and hate about the industry. I've
Absolutely.
I've worked with some companies where art directors are not artists themselves, and this is
Yep.
very, very frustrating as an artist.
Yep.
I don't need them to know like every discipline, but it's like you kind of need to, like, you can't really hire an illustrator and not have any idea of how long it takes them, and then go, hey,
Right.
can I have like 20 illustrations in a week?
I
No.
think from my observations, and this is not a dig at anyone specifically, but
Right.
from my observations, because the TTRPG space is relatively new, obviously some companies have been around for a lot longer, but the TTRPG space as a whole is a relatively new industry. We are still finding our legs. We are still having arguments online as to what professionalism looks like in our space.
True.
And I think there is a huge disconnect in tabletop versus other industries with regards to art direction and creative direction and all that stuff, because there are so many people who have sort of fallen into the role of being project leads, who were just hobbyists before. They don't have any other professional experience. They are people who may or may not have a lot of money and were like, oh, I like playing games. Why don't I try to make something? And they, gather a team together and they decide to just go for it. And that leads to a lot of people who don't necessarily have the professional experience being in leadership roles. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but kind of like what you said, there's a lot of art directors out there who aren't artists themselves, and or have never worked as an artist in the artist's position before. And I think there's a lot of successful art directors who are not artists themselves, but
Right.
at least in my experience, from the artist side, I work a lot better with art directors who are also artists themselves, because they just know how to talk to artists, being one themselves. And so
Right.
that is definitely like one of my strengths as an art director, is that like I am also an artist, so I know how to talk to artists. I can do drawovers, I can do paintovers, I have an eye for design, and you know having a degree doesn't really matter as an artist. Your portfolio is really all that matters.
Yep.
But given that I did go to art school, I learned how to give and receive critique in a way that is constructive and not just like, this sucks and I'm not gonna tell you why. Like sometimes I've worked with clients who are like, I don't like this. And I'm like, okay, cool, explain. And they can't
Right.
articulate what they don't like about it. So then I have to basically hold their hand and guide them through, like, okay, if you don't like how this looks, completely fine. Obviously, you're the one paying for the art. But if you can't articulate to me what you would rather it look like, I don't have the time, nor are you paying me enough to just spit out concepts until we land on something you do like. So
Right.
I actually have written a lot of resources for clients, for example, of like how to find references. I have a public document that I share with my clients for like, here's how you go find character references, for example. And I have 8 different ideas for how to get character references to your artists, because oftentimes artists charge more if you don't have a character design. And to any artist who is listening to this, if clients are asking you to do character art for them and they do not have a character design, and are basically asking you to design the character for them, that is a character design commission, and you should be charging more than just drawing a character that already has a design. Because I think there are like very broadly speaking, like two kinds of artists, right? There's people who are great artists and great at drawing, and then there's designers, people who are really good at designing things. And a lot of artists can be both, but sometimes someone's better at designs, and someone else might be better at like illustrating, right? And actually, just drawing something with references. So to all artists, if you are doing character design work, you should be charging for that. But I have a document where I give to my clients if they don't have a character design. I'm like, here are ways that you can get me those visual references I need, so that I'm not designing your character for you from scratch.
Right. So, out of curiosity, if so, I want to give artists language that they can use without being offensive, and being
Yeah.
like, "Hey, you quoted me for this, but this is actually character design, and it should actually be this." Like, what is a way if somebody approached you and was like, "I know what you gave me, but this is what it should be." Like, what would be a better language that you think that would convey that?
So if I get an email from someone and they're like, "Can you draw my character?" I usually the first thing I respond with, assuming they haven't specified, is like, "Hey, like I actually draw in a lot of different styles, and my final quote will depend on what style you want me to draw in and what the scope of the piece is. So that's like, is it a bust? Is it a half body, full body, etc.? Because obviously those all cost different amounts. Is it a sketch? Is it flat color? Is it full color? And then I have many different rendering styles that I work in. So I will usually send a link to my website directly, and basically tell them, if you find a piece that I've done already that is in the style you want, that is going to be the easiest for the client to tell me what they're looking for, rather than me try to like type out and describe my different styles. Because without the visuals, especially for clients who aren't very artistically inclined, it's harder for them to pick what they want based on just a verbal description. So I'll usually just be like, "Hey, go look at my art and tell me what style you want this in," because I work in a bunch of different styles. And or I'll say like, "Go look through my art Twitter," because I have an art Twitter separate from my main Twitter. So my art Twitter is still at Nala Draws. I'll tell them to look through the media tab and be like, "All right, go look there," because I post most of my work there too, and let me know what style you want. And then after that, I will ask for their character design. I'll say like, "Tell me about your character." And if they're like, "Oh, I don't really have any like references or anything," that's when I tell them like, "Oh, so like if you want me to be designing this character for you, there's actually going to be a slight there's going to be a charge added to that, because this is now a design commission." But then I'll link them my document. I'll say, "Here is a document, a resource that I wrote for how to gather reference for artists." And I can send you this, Devin, if you want to like put it in like the description of the podcast or something.
Absolutely.
But in this document, for example, some of my tips include you can use any sort of character creator like Picroos or fucking Baldur's Gate 3 character maker, or The Sims, or any of those character things, right? And even if it's not exactly what you want, even that is better than nothing, right?
Right.
And so I will tell them that, and try to get at least something from them. I also have I have a form
Okay.
that they can fill out where it is very specific character questions, like character name, age, pronouns, height, skin color and description of the skin, hair color, hairstyle, eyes, do they have scars, piercings, tattoos, what's their like, do they have a real world ethnicity equivalent, what fantasy species are they, tell me a little bit about their personality, what do they wear for clothes, what pose or facial expression do you want, like that's another text description that I really ask for, because even if you give me this text description, like I need this like in tandem with other references, but that is a really great starting point for people who haven't thought about what actually they want their character to look like. I am also encouraging people to like find face claims or gather references for clothing. So I wrote in my document like, it's okay to say like, send a picture of a shirt and be like, "I want this character to wear this shirt from this picture the pants from this other picture and the shoes in this picture, but I want the shoes to be blue instead. So that's definitely very valid ways that you can cobble together references without being an artist yourself.
Right. I actually kind of go the opposite direction when it comes to cartography, because not that, it's wonderful to include your favorite lake or a region that you are from. And I've had people do this. It's just almost immediately, one, not only do other people from that area or whatever will recognize it, but the amount of people that will attempt to correct it, even though it's a fantasy map, which is hilarious.
Yep.
But also every single person I've known who has done it, well, not every person, but most of the people I know have been like, oh, wow, I wish I hadn't, because everybody only focuses on that thing that's recognizable. And I'm like, well, I don't know what else to tell you. We already made the map. You want it in there. So, but yeah, the other thing is that there is copyright issues. Don't give me stuff from other people's fantasy maps.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, no, I think that's great for portraits, especially.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and I should have specified, this is specifically for character design commissions.
Right. Oh, no, you did. You were great. Oh, now I have more questions. Okay, so do you use contracts for your clients, regardless of size?
Absolutely. So I actually have my terms and conditions attached to my invoices, and every client that I take, regardless of size of the project, I give them this invoice, and that's how I get paid. And it's good for my records, as someone who is reporting all my stuff to the IRS and stuff, but also for the client's records as well. But attached to my invoice is this terms and conditions page, which I will send to you. Happy to share this as a resource. I am so very grateful for my business of illustration class that I took while I was in school, because I learned about contracts, contract language, how to read and understand contracts, and how to write contracts. And a lot of this wording I took from this class, and I fully allow and offer it to other artists to just straight up steal, because I stole it. So
Right.
these are terms and conditions that are also available on my website. And I send the link to clients ahead of time so that they know kind of what they're getting into. I have a specific thing at the very end here that says, like, the signature of both parties shall evidence acceptance of these terms. In lieu of signature, other written agreement, email or other, or the transfer of payment will suffice. And I put that there because people don't always sign the terms and conditions page and send it back to me after I send the invoice to them. So this covers my ass, where I'm just like, if you pay me, that means that you've accepted these terms and conditions.
Correct.
And the other thing that I am very proud of that I would like to direct your attention to is at the very top, I have an anti-NFT, anti-generative AI clause at the top of this. And I fully, again, welcome people to steal this. So I said at the very top of my terms and conditions, client may not, under any circumstances, display artist's work in favorable association with or use the work to promote generative or AI generative art, including but not limited to programs like DALL-E or Midjourney, NFTs, non-fungible tokens, or cryptocurrency. Clients also may not upload or submit artists' work to train any AI program or mint the work as an NFT, regardless of what usage license was purchased and agreed upon by both parties. And what that basically means is that even if they're paying for a full copyright transfer, they cannot use my work for anything related to AI, NFTs, any of that, even if they own the work. That is in my terms and conditions, because
yes,
I don't do that shit. So
right, same. I had someone else on here and they don't sign contracts, and I'm like, no.
You need contracts.
You need contracts. You need contracts, not just in case somebody does something with your art you don't want. you also need it for you. You need to be able to prove that you are actively trying to protect your artwork so
Yeah.
that if somebody puts your stuff up on Amazon and slaps it on a bunch of print on demand products, you can go,
Yeah.
no. Look, I am actively, even though I never talk to this person, I don't know who they are, you can show a judge. Like, I have all these contracts. I actively am protecting my work. It says in
Yeah.
this that you can't put any of my stuff on print on demand products, or that you can't use it for AI or NFTs. As long as you have proof that this is what you do with every art project you do, if someone else takes that art, whether it's a project you did with them or not, you can prove you've been protecting yourself.
Exactly.
That's what you need in court.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And if anyone is curious about my terms and conditions, you can go to knowledgedraws.com/terms and you can view my terms and conditions.
We will also have a link.
Amazing. And yes,
Yeah.
please steal from me. And then be sure to actually change in the wording. I specifically have stuff specific to Massachusetts. So you'll just have to change that specific wording to whatever it is for the state that you live in. And look up the rules for that. It's in the dispute resolution section. So you'll just have to look up what that is for your state. In Massachusetts, any disputes in excess of $7,000 arising out of this agreement shall be submitted in mediation in accordance with the rules of the Massachusetts Art and Business Council. Blah 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 blah. Lots of legalese. But you definitely have to look that up for your specific state, and I will flag that for people who are interested in just copying and pasting what I have. So unless you are also in Massachusetts, you got to look that up for your own state. But yes, please steal from me. Please steal from me. I did the legwork. Please steal from me.
Right. We can't make it any easier for you.
Exactly.
Artists,
please protect yourselves. Like, please do contracts, and also educate yourself on usage license.
Yep.
Because there's differences between full copyright transfers and limited exclusivity license, full exclusivity license, and what I call my basic commercial license, which is the one that I recommend all my clients go with, because most of the time clients do not need a full copyright transfer. That's something
Correct.
I'm trying to hammer into the heads of people in this space. There's so many small indie companies who are asking for full copyright transfers. And I'm like, do you understand that for a full copyright transfer, that is at least double the price, if not triple the price? Because artists out there, if the client is asking for a full copyright transfer or ownership of your work, you need to be charging at least double what you would have charged, including your normal commercial rates. The reason for that is because when you sign over the ownership and copyright to your client, they can theoretically use the art for whatever they want. They can put it on merch, they can alter it, they can edit it, they can put whatever they want on it, and they don't even have to credit you, which they should, but because they own it, they technically do not have to credit you once they own the work. And the reason it costs so much is because you are quoting them money based on projected additional money that the client will be making off of your work after you don't own it anymore. So usually I tell clients, like, if you have no plans for merch, then you likely don't really need a full copyright transfer. And sometimes clients will push back and be like, but legally we want to be able to own the work, blah, 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 blah. And I will gently explain that what you are looking for most likely is a full exclusivity license, where that basically means that the artist still retains copyright over their work, but they cannot relicense it to anyone else. The only client who will be able to use the work is the original client who commissioned the work. That is what a full exclusivity license is. And that is still more expensive, but it's not a full copyright transfer. So I usually try to push people there if they're insistent, that they're like, oh, we don't want anyone else using a work in their books, or I don't want you relicensing this. I'm like, okay, so I think An exclusivity license is what you're looking for, not a full copyright transfer.
Right. And just be aware, artists, that there is a difference between somebody commissioning you and doing work for hire.
Yup.
Work for hire means you are working on someone else's IP. You're using their names, their characters, such as if a company hires you to do portraits of their characters. They're already designed, they already have a look, everything else. You can't. That is work for hire.
Yep.
And that is exclusively theirs. You are still the artist. You still own the design, but you can't do anything else with it. And you don't own the name or the look.
Exactly. And I think I will just briefly explain the difference between commercial work and personal commissions as well, just for anyone listening. The bare basics is that if the person who's commissioning you is going to be making money off of your work in any way, shape, or form, then that is commercial work, and you should be paying, or you should be charging commercial rates. Versus a private commission is like a random person being like, hey, can you draw my D&D character? And you're like, great, cool. Personal use includes people using it for their profile pictures on Discord, or sending it to their home game group, or maybe a DM is commissioning you to draw NPCs that they'll be showing to their home game groups. Personal use includes the person who commissioned the work making one print of your work to hang up on their wall or to give as a gift. That's all personal use. Once a game is a streamed game, for example, if someone's commissioning you for character art for a stream, that's commercial use. If someone is commissioning you because they want to sell prints of their character that they play, like say a voice actor comes up to you and is like, hey, I voiced this character on this show, I would love to commission a piece from you of the character that I voice, and I want to sell signed prints of it at a convention, commercial use. Hey, I want to commission you for work that is going to be in this TTRPG book, commercial work. If someone is like, I want a portrait of me to be used on all of my socials as part of my business or brand, commercial work. There, because that's part of like logos and branding. That's why that's commercial work, versus a random person being like, I want you to draw me so I can use it as my profile picture. Like there is a difference, and you need to be aware of that difference.
Right. Commercial work doesn't always mean that they're making direct money off of it.
Exactly. Branding counts. Or if it's being used in something that is going to be sold. Like basically, the other way that I explain this to people is that like, if the person who is buying your work, if the chain of transfer starts and ends with that person, then, and they're not making any money off of it, that's personal use. But if the person who is commissioning the work is going to use it for something that will be making money, or will be using it for their public presence as a content creator or whatever, that will be giving them income. If it's like Twitch, what are they called? Emotes, like all that stuff, like that's all commercial work. So just think about like the chain of who else is going to be seeing this work, and will people in the future be getting access to work because they've paid for something or something like that? Then that is all commercial work, or
Absolutely.
part of branding.
And the reason that you should always be charging differently for commercial work is not because somebody's making money off of it, but because you cannot make any further money off of it. Hey, artists, I love you. I'm one of you. I understand. But you need to make more than a single payment for any work that you're doing that isn't commercial. The amount of artists that I watch that create a single illustration for one person and never do anything else with it, when the person hasn't paid for exclusivity, hasn't paid for anything commercial, you're making $80 off of a single drawing all day? 2 days, 3 days? Like, we need to talk about passive income here, people.
Yeah, because the concept of relicensing work is something that I talk about a lot, because not a lot of people do that in this space.
Right.
If a client has not paid for full exclusivity, even if this was commercial work, if a client has not paid for full exclusivity or a full copyright transfer, you can relicense that work. And that is something I tell indie game designers who are pitching hissy fits about how, oh, art costs so much, therefore I'm going to use AI. No, boo. Stock art exists, public domain art exists, and there are lots of artists in this space who relicense existing work. And that is way cheaper than commissioning something original for yourself. And so there's tons of options out there, and you can always reach out to an artist and ask, hey, do you license existing pieces? And if so, do you have a gallery that I can look through of what work is available to be relicensed? And it is way cheaper. Is it going to be original and specific to your project? No, but it is way cheaper to get really good, high quality art in that sense, in that method. There's also tons of artists on places like itch.io or other sites who sell like packages of their work. So like artists will be like, here is like 10 fantasy portraits of tieflings, and you can buy the pack and then you can use that art for your home games, or if you're buying a commercial license you can use it in your books or whatever. Lots of artists sell are relicensing their work. That is a much cheaper way to get high quality art for your work.
It's also something I encourage a lot of other artists to not only look into and find how to do themselves, because not only is it a great way for you to turn around and tell clients like, oh, okay, so you're looking for a specific tiefling. I already have this whole pack done of tieflings. If you want something minor changed, it's only a few dollars difference.
Right.
You know, and it's a lot easier. It is a great way for us to kind of combat everything going on with AI right now, because not only are half of these people just looking for stuff that already exists, clearly because the AI can produce it. So whatever they're looking for already exists.
Yeah.
You know,
how original are you?
Right. You know, the other thing is like, I feel not, there's so many people that come into the tabletop space, so many artists that come into this space. And I just recently had this because I am doing the tarot card project, and I'm starting to talk to other artists, and I'm looking at people's rates, and we all need to talk about what you should be charging here.
Oh my God, yes.
I found somebody who, for a full body illustration, is asking for like $180.
Oh no, like full color too?
Yeah, fully rendered, full body.
No.
No.
I'm gonna.
What are you doing?
Spray bottle. No.
Right.
Here's my opinion. If I'm gonna pull out a soapbox for a moment.
Please do.
Hey artists, this is Nala, or Jay, your friendly local art director, and I'm here to talk to you about your rates and what you should be charging based on industry standard. Now let's be real, TTRPGs doesn't pay a lot. There's not a lot of money here, and in other industries you may find that the rates are higher. However, in my tenure in TTRPGs, I have been pushing for more fair payments for artists. And let's get one thing straight, okay? You can charge whatever you want to charge for your art. I am not here to tell you that you're doing it wrong. However, there is an industry standard that I am trying to push people towards, and you probably need to raise your rates. If you're listening to this, you probably should raise your rates. Okay, so first of all, if you have not raised your rates within the last year, you need to look up how much inflation has increased in your country, whether that's in the US or elsewhere, and you raise your rates by at least that percentage amount every year to account for inflation. Because $80 in 2019 is very different from $80 in 2024. So at the very least, you got to be raising your rates every year. But let's talk about specific rates, shall we?
Yes, we shall.
For cover art, because that's a really big one, because clients are always surprised when I tell them. At the very bare bones minimum, and this is the rate that I give indie creators, people who are self-publishing. They're not working with a company. They are either funding this through Kickstarter or some other crowdfunding, or maybe they're paying for it out of pocket, but they don't have a company backing them. They don't have a publisher. They are self-publishing. And also, they are multiple marginalized. This is just I'm talking about my rates. $500 minimum for a cover. Minimum. But if you are a company, if you are an established creator, $1,000 minimum for a cover for known companies. I think you should be charging. Maybe go as low as $800 if the cover is simpler. But established companies in this space should be paying at least $1,000. As art director, I recently commissioned a cover for a project, and we paid the artist $2,500 US dollars. Also, to clarify, I'm speaking in US dollars because I am from the United States. $2,500 for a cover. That is kind of the rates that I'm seeing. Unfortunately, it's been kind of a battle to push people to even buy into the $500, but know your worth. Books cannot sell without cover art, so you should know your worth. Cover art is so important to the marketing of a book. It is integral to the shelf presence of a book. Cover art is so important, and so you need to be charging for how important that piece of art is going to be for your client. So let's move on to other stuff. For character art, because that's very hotly talked about. What'd you say? $180 for a full color?
For a full color rendered body.
Boo. No. Bad. Not good. Spray bottle. For a full rendered, and I'm talking like specifically, because also rates will vary depending on what art style you work in. Like classic, like full rendered painterly style that is often seen in Wizards of the Coast products. I call that I refer to that style as painted fantasy realism. That style typically is more expensive than, say, a line art with cel shading kind of style. Definitely look at charge for what you are comfortable making. But that being said, full render of a full body, I would say at the very least you should be charging like $300 for that, $400.
Right.
And like I've seen other artists who charge even more, like $500, $600. Because if you're doing like a full body design with full render, full color, all of that, like at the very least $300. But for me, my rates sit more around the $400, $500 range, and even more if the character design is complicated. Because that's the other thing. Like I charge for complex details. And that is something that you should do too. Because if a character is wearing something really easy to draw, you shouldn't charge the same amount as a character who's wearing like a full set of engraved armor with an embroidered scarf that you're going to have to hand draw that pattern, right? Like there's differences, right? So charge for complexity. Character busts, okay? Like I think a fully rendered character bust at minimum should be like $150, $200. And this is like a full render. Like I start my my sketch busts with flat color. I'm pretty sure my rates are and this is like not refined line art. This is like sketchy line art with like flat colors, minimal shading. I charge maybe $60 for that. I think 60 to 80 depending on complexity. My full color busts, and this is not my like fully rendered style. This is like my personal style that utilizes line art, but it still has like shading and everything. I think my starting rates for those are about $130. I don't remember. I have all my rates written down because again, like I increase them every year, so I have a sheet that I keep track of.
Hmm.
Environment speed paints. I'm talking about no perspectives. These are natural environments. This is like the outdoors, mountains, trees, forests, lakes, ocean, stuff that doesn't like I call it all like organic exteriors, which doesn't require perspective. So I'll do speed paints. And those speed paints start around like $200, $300. Um, anything with perspective in the background, I usually charge extra for that because that is a lot of technical drawing skill, which again is a separate skill that artists can hone. Because, there's a lot of artists who are really talented, but perspective, a mystery.
That would be me.
If you can find an artist who knows about perspective and knows how to draw that, they like you should charge more for that because that is a honed skill that not everyone has. So that's the other thing. Ooh, I'm gonna get on my soapbox again. Not that I ever got off, but the concept of a full page versus half page versus quarter page rate is outdated. And
Yes, it
the reason it is outdated is because back in the day, when most artists were working traditionally, i.e., oil paints on canvas or gouache or watercolor, a full page piece physically was larger than a half page piece, which is why full pages would be quoted higher than half pages because the actual canvas was physically larger. So it would take more time to finish, more paint to finish, and all of that. Now that everything is, most artists work digitally now, the physical canvas size is no longer a thing. So I am advocating for and pushing for clients to move away from full half quarter page rates and instead pay artists based on complexity. Because you can have a full page piece that takes up the entire page, but it's just a single character with a relatively simple background, versus a half page piece where you have multiple characters, I don't know, fighting each other, riding horses, wearing armor, with a dragon in the background, right? Like that's a much more complicated piece. Oh, and also it's inside a cathedral, a Gothic cathedral, with
Of course.
with all of that perspective, right?
And the stained
So
glass and
oh yeah, and the lighting and the magical effects, right? Like that is a much more complex piece. And if you're paying someone less just because it is a half page versus a full page, nah, you got to pay based on complexity. And so artists, you need to be charging based on complexity, not based on the percentage of page that your art is going to take up in the final product. The last thing I want to say is that for any clients or artists who want to talk more about this, I offer consulting. Happy to sit down with any project leads. You tell me what kind of art you're looking for, what the vibe is, and as an art director, I can help give you numbers. I will give you an art budget. I will help you with all of that sort of things. That's sort of like the first tier of what I offer as a freelance art director. You can hire me as a consultant, and you will walk out of that with a budget and recommendations for artists and that sort of thing. So that's sort of like the my basic tier of what I offer as an art director in this space. Happy to talk about your specific project needs and help you with an art budget that is going to be fair for both you as a client and for the artists that you are hiring.
I do the same thing, but for cartography because I'm starting to get a little
Woohoo!
right. As much as so because I do have cartographers that follow me, there is a difference between doing illustration and doing cartography. We do have different prices. We do have different requirements, mostly because almost everything we do deals with somebody else's IP. So we are, unless we are making something of original design, which is not usually what we're commissioned for, is an issue. The other thing is that a lot of people who do commission us to do do maps for them are hoping to maybe one day turn it into a book, or like right now, oh, I don't, but what if I want to? You still are using text verbs and descriptions and everything from someone else's creation, we still kind of, unless you make sure it's okay with them that you do it, I have in all of my commissions, if someone commissions me to do it, and I make sure that they understand that I will be reselling the maps. I offer them to other people to use. And if you don't want that, then you're going to have to pay for exclusivity and licensing, because this is how it should be. The other thing is, I can hear you all back there telling Nala here that, like, yeah, that's all great, but how am I supposed to tell my customers that? They're all going to leave me. They're not going to want to hire me asking for those prices. I can guarantee they're not going to leave. And even if they do, you're still going to find people who will pay you the amounts you're asking. And I know this for an absolute fact because we already do that. When I talk about my prices, when I talk about my prices on this podcast, I tell everyone I charge $4,000 for a world map. That is what I charge, because that is exclusivity and licensing. I'm never going to make any other money. I can't do anything else with it. Even though I make sure that I can sell prints. I can't give anyone else exclusivity. I do sell downloads. That can be, you can absolutely have that in your contract that you're allowed to sell prints and downloads. You just can't do anything with it that you don't have control over. So, like, a perfect example is you can't give it to a print-on-demand company to make shirts or stickers or whatever, because you can't control what that company does with their products or how they react to things. And most people that hire you don't want to find out that you're, there is somehow third person associated with an asshole company. Right. But you can find people that will ask you for that. And I know it's really nerve-wracking to be like, oh, well, I want this amount of money. And you're afraid that your clients will disappear. Or, hey, we all have bills to pay. And if you are genuinely that uncomfortable, that's fine. Don't feel like you have to do it. But if you have the opportunity, or I don't know, maybe, because we've all had them, a client that's a little, you're not too sure if you really want to do the work or not, there's the perfect person to test whether or not a higher rate would help. Absolutely, asshole tax is what I like to call it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely charge that asshole tax.
Here's the other thing also, like, if you're asked to do a project that you're not super jazzed about and you're like, I really don't want to do this, charge like an extra $100, $200. And at the end of the day, like, they either will say that's too high, thank you, have a good day, or they'll just ghost you, because that's more standard. Don't ghost people, but whatever.
Right.
Either you get out of doing it because you've quoted something too high, or they pay the extra amount and now you're getting extra money for something that you're not that jazzed about, but at least you have the extra money. And I do that all the time. Like, if someone comes to me with a character design that I'm like, this is boring, I'll charge a little extra and they'll either take it or leave it. But I'm like, all right, I don't want to be drawing your basic white man either, but I'm getting extra money from it, so sure.
Right. And when you do have bills to pay and it's very, like, you're not getting a ton of work, I know that a lot of people are like, oh, that's the worst time to ask for a pay increase. No, it isn't. It really isn't. Because any job you do, any commission that you do that you don't really want to, eats away at you.
Yeah.
It eats away at your job. It takes longer than it should. It takes away from doing the things that, one, people know you for, or that you have fun with, that you get to be creative with, that you could actually sell in various different ways instead of this one piece. Don't say yes just because it's like, oh, well, the phone bill's due. I understand completely, been there myself. And if you can ever have the opportunity to say no to it, absolutely do. Or just increase the rates. And then this way you don't feel as guilty over the fact that you didn't get the job because it couldn't afford you.
Yeah. Because the other thing also is that, like, I I am the reason why I advocate for people charging more is that if you are charging more and raising your rates, you can do less work for more money.
Yep.
And that is good for you as a person, because like I think what we all have to remember as we talk about all of this stuff is that like artists are people and we need to make money. We deserve to make a living off of what we do. And so um you should be able to take the amount of work that you can take on and pay all your bills. And
Right.
if that means charging more to do less faster, absolutely do that, okay? Like, it is okay to do that. You are not greedy for asking for more money. Um, you deserve to make a living. No one is entitled to have art in their work, okay? Like it is a luxury product. It is expensive because it is a very highly specialized skill that you as an artist have honed for years to be able to do. Okay? Art is not easy, but it is achievable by anyone who wants to practice, okay? Like art is hard though. I'm not gonna, lie about that. It is hard. I have been drawing for maybe close to 2 decades now. And my art is at the place it is at because of years of dedication and practice and hard work. And that's what you're paying for. You're not just paying for the piece, you're paying for my years of practice and my knowledge and my trained eye. You are paying for my creativity, all of those things. So you deserve to charge the rates that you want to charge so that you can make a living off of your work, because your art, your voice, your creativity is valued and respected, and you deserve to get that bag.
Exactly. And here's the other thing, like you already have the job. I say this all the time. You already have the job. They came to you, they want to hire you. They like what you do. They love your work. You have the job. Please, if you have the opportunity, and again, do what feels the most comfortable. And the same thing with the only thing I argue over is I know that it's uncomfortable for contracts. I know that it's not a quote unquote norm. I don't care. Make it the norm. Make it the norm to protect yourself and other artists in our industry. One of the hardest things about being, especially in the tabletop space, is technically in almost every art industry, there isn't a standard unless it's things like fashion or well-established industries that have and even then I'm sure I could talk to numerous people in the fashion industry that would argue with me that there aren't prices that are set across it. But it's even harder here because so many people, one, are little indie companies that don't really have the budget, and there's nothing the matter with saying like, oh, I really want to work on this project, I'll take less money.
Yes. That's something you can do too, right? Like I voluntarily lower my rates for multiple marginalized folk. Like if another queer trans person of color wants to hire me, like and they don't have a huge budget, I am more likely to quote them a lower rate just because of that. And also if it is a project that I really want to work on, and they don't have a huge budget, I am willing to cut my rates again so that I can work on this project that I really want to work on.
Right.
And that's something that you can do as well.
Don't cut it down just because you want to work on the project, especially if the company is a big name.
That is, oh yes, that is true. You gotta pick and choose, okay? You gotta know your client, okay? Like if they don't have a huge budget and you really want to work on the project, you like the concept, whatever, you can cut your rates. But if it is a well-established company, do not cut your rates, okay? Like I specifically am talking about like the indie singleton people who don't have companies backing them. That's what I'm talking about for cutting your rates, okay?
Exactly.
Companies have money. Yes, we need to clarify that. Do not cut your rates for WotC. Do not cut your rates for any of these established companies. Nuh-uh. Charge
Yeah,
what you're worth.
exactly. And, you know, and again, don't be afraid to have a conversation with an art director.
Yep.
You know, if you know, some of them, yes, we were complaining before, some of them are not artists and they don't necessarily understand, but that doesn't mean that they're always the bad guy. They're not always out to fuck you over. It could
Yeah.
genuinely be they don't know how long it takes.
Yeah.
As a cartographer, the amount of art directors that I have been talking to over the years who have no idea how long an actual world map or a regional map takes compared to like drawing a battle map, which for most
Yeah.
people, like, Jesus Christ, can people fucking turn those out in a day or two, you know, a few
Yeah.
hours of work. And I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Fuck no.
Speed
Like,
demons. Speed
right.
demons.
Right. I mean, and they're beautiful maps, but I'm just like, how the fuck? I can't.
How
This
do
is
you draw
probably
that fast?
right. This is why I don't do battle maps though either. But I'm just like, God damn. There's people out there who just put me to shame. But I mean, the other thing is that once you start having that conversation, once you open the dialogue, it allows them to be like, oh, I didn't know this isn't the kind of artwork I do, even if they are an artist.
Right, yeah. And like I've done consults for lots of different people where I basically they approached me to work with them and I wow. They approached me to work with them and I quote them what my rates are and they're like, wow, this is actually a lot higher than I was expecting. Can we talk about it? And I'm like, yeah, sure, let's do a consult about it. And so we hop into a meeting. I'm getting paid for my time and I explain like, here's why I charge the rates that I charge. And if the rates that you quoted me originally are what your company does during that consult, I gently basically advocate that the rates should be raised to better fit in line with what industry standard is. And that's absolutely something that you should be advocating for as well.
Right. And I know there's, you know, if you do get hired by WotC or Wizards of the Coast, for those who don't know what WotC means,
Yes.
I just realized that, you know, it is intimidating. Absolutely. Especially, you know, Magic the Gathering. It's a huge thing for a lot of us artists. Fully understand. There is nothing the matter with going like, hey, this is great. I definitely want to do the project, but it's going to take me, you know, you're giving me this deadline. You're telling me how much you're going to pay me. This is a lot shorter than what I need, or this is a lot less than what I would charge. And it does depend. Like a perfect example is a lot of Magic the Gathering artists are able to sell prints or originals. That's awesome. I did the Lord of the Rings one. I can't do that because it does depend on the IP and the project that they're creating. So don't assume that you'll have that to make up the difference. Always ask first, although my art director was fantastic. I absolutely love them. And they told me ahead of time and they're like, we'll absolutely match your prices. Perfect. You know,
yeah,
which
and
was
I think,
good to know.
Yeah, and it's really important to communicate. Like as someone who does both illustration and art direction now, being an art director means that I am balancing the needs of a company or a client as well as the needs of the artists that I'm hiring. And this is, I can only speak for myself, but obviously I do not try to screw anyone over. Like that's ridiculous. Like I am all for transparency. I advocate for clients to be very upfront when they reach out to artists to see if they're interested in working on their projects. I say you need to approach artists with as much information up front as possible. So if you can say up front, like, hey, I, saw your work online, or I am interested in reaching out to you for some commercial work. Are you available? Here's the timeline. Tell them when the art will be due, because then the artist can look at their calendar and see if they even have time to work on this project. You tell them what the scope is. What are you hiring them for? Is it like just one piece of spot art, or do you want to hire them for, I don't know, 20 illustrations? And what is the general like theme or vibe of the project? Is this high is this like hard sci-fi with like lots of technology and robots and spaceships and that kind of thing, or is it high fantasy? Is it modern day? You know, like all of the different genres kind of give off different vibes and themes, so you know, that sort of thing. And most importantly, tell them your budget. Like, clients should be upfront about their budget, because then you avoid the whole rigmarole, like Spider-Man pointing meme, where the client is going, "What are your rates?" And then the artist is going, "What's your budget?" Right? Like as
Right.
a client, you have the responsibility and ability to be upfront with what your budget is, because then the artist, it is on the artist to decide, "Oh, okay, those rates sound fair, and I will take them." Or the artist can be like, "Those rates are kind of low. Can we negotiate?" Or, "No, I'm not interested at that time," for whatever reason. But as a client, as someone with the position of hiring power in this relationship, I believe in high transparency and the onus on the client to be transparent about their rates, so that artists can decide for themselves if this project is a good fit for them. Because I've had many situations where clients will basically go to all of these different artists for like the same thing, right? So let's say I'm hiring like 20 artists and I'm getting one character design from all of the artists. I think a really shady thing that clients will do is that they'll go to each individual artist and ask them, "What are your rates?" and then pay those rates. But that means that some artists will be paid a lot less for essentially the same work as other artists, and I think that's unfair. If you're hiring a bunch of people for the same thing, you should go get everyone's quotes if that's how you want to do it, but then pay everyone the highest rate. That
Right.
is good practice, I think, and that's something I advocate for people to do. Or if you are on a budget, right, be upfront about your rates. Like I was working for a very small indie company, doing art direction for them, and we decided that in our budget we were going to pay $80 for a character bust design, and that it wasn't full render. We were looking for line art with like cell shading, so not fully rendered piece, but definitely still full color. When I put out an art call for that project, in the Google form description, I said, "Here's the scope of the work, here is the timeline, and we are paying $80 per bust." And I was very, very upfront about that, because then I knew that anyone who applied to this art call was okay with that scope, that timeline, and that rate.
Right.
And putting it up front in that space allows artists to look at it and be like, "Okay, I'd do it for $80." Or people to be like, "No, I'm worth more than that, and that rate isn't uh, that rate isn't a good fit for me." And they can make that decision themselves. And that's something that's so important as someone who's now an art director and has that hiring power. I am trying to be as upfront and as transparent as possible, because I've been on the other side of it. I still am on the other side of it. And everyone deserves to be paid more in this space. So.
Absolutely. So for the cartography tarot deck that I'm creating, I asked a bunch of artists if they would want to be a part of it. We already started talking, and it was like over time. So I just like, made a note of everyone that I really wanted to work with. I looked up everybody's rates because almost everybody had them on their site, or I found out one way or another. I just outright asked. Um, I have the contract that I wrote up with the price and everything else, and that contract is visible by everybody. Everybody has the same exact contract. It's put out there. We're all on a little miniature, little small Discord. Everything about the project is as transparent as I could possibly get it, including everything that I'm doing as the creator and all the steps that I'm taking and who I'm talking to and when. Because one, I don't understand the fucking point of an NDA where I get that some people do this so they can do a whole product launch. I get that. What I don't get is small companies that are doing this because it's the standard. Listen, let your artists hype up your project.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let them talk about the art that they're creating, that they're enthusiastically creating before the launch. You can absolutely build up a hype for a product, for a Kickstarter, for anything that you're creating if you allow the artists that you're hiring to talk about it. Putting us under NDA makes it really difficult, especially when we get done with the art and then a year later it comes out. We're no longer excited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a thin line that I walk on as an art director, because like at the very least, what I usually put in the art contracts is that like we ask that the artists don't post their work on social media until it's been approved by like the marketing team, because then we can do
Right.
like a concentrated marketing push. But and so basically, usually if you're working for me, generally what I do is I have we say like, please don't post on social media. You can quietly add it to your portfolio once you're done, but like don't post it on socials until either the product comes out or you've been given the go ahead from me as the art director, or we've used your art as social media promo prior to it coming out, where basically that allows artists, like let's say we use your art as a like promo, we absolutely want the artists to be able to like quote tweet it and be like, hey, here's the piece I worked on, or to post it
Right.
themselves, be like, look at this piece that I worked on for XYZ project. Like absolutely what you said, Devin, like getting people getting the people who are working on your project to talk excitedly about their work on the project is so important. And that sort of organic marketing is really good for getting more eyes on your stuff. And I absolutely agree. There's a weird trend where like even the smallest companies will ask for an NDA, and I'm like, why?
Right.
Why?
Like I can
No.
understand with writers, because maybe you don't want someone to like have anything spoiled or have your ideas stolen or whatever.
Right.
But if I mean, and I can also kind of understand with maps, all right, but I mean with all the other work, you're not giving anything away by sharing a picture of a character or like a part of a set, or like a background, like and what makes it harder, and it's a reason that it is a reason I charge more for a commercial as well, because during that whole time, if I'm under NDA, my socials are practically dead. I have nothing I can share.
Right. So you're just sharing old work and you're like, okay.
Right. And I don't get to talk about a project. And then, and the other thing is that it also comes down to like things like our Patreon. The only thing that we can say is, oh, I'm working on another NDA project. Yeah, that's great. Our patrons really care about that, like.
Yeah. Sorry, can't show you, but I'm working on something really cool and maybe you'll see it in 2 years.
Right. Right.
Because also like that's the other thing too, is that like if a company is making you sign, or a client's making you sign an NDA, charge more, because you won't be able to talk about the work, and then by the time it comes out or by the time the NDA expires, your style, your artwork has probably improved, so then it's not even worth putting it in your portfolio anymore. So they're preventing you from being able to use it for self promo. So absolutely charge more for that.
The other thing is, if any time that you know that you're going to be working on an NDA project, I highly recommend that you schedule social media posts. Save yourself some heartache. If you put anything on your calendar at the same time, my favorite one to use, but it's expensive in the grand scheme of things, is Loomly, which is a great product. It's fantastic. It works with Twitter and Instagram and everything else. But it also gives suggestions on how to make better posts, which I absolutely love.
Yeah, that seems really useful.
Yeah, it tells you like things like, oh, you should put a link in here, or pictures do better, or videos do better, or we found that anything longer than this length doesn't quite work as well, and I'm like, oh, that's actually really good to know, because I suck at social media, so that's fantastic. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, do yourself a favor, schedule posts, talk about even some of your older work. You don't necessarily have to say like, "Hey, I'm doing an NDA project right now, so I can't talk about it," because that doesn't ever help, unfortunately.
Just
But
post the old work. Like
yeah,
Twitter algorithm moves on so quickly. You
right,
should constantly be reposting your work because there's no shame in that. And as long as you're not doing it like too much, I mean, like people are gonna miss the first time you post. So
right.
please repost your work. That's very easy to schedule those posts, or at least put a reminder to go post something if you will have a long stretch of time where you can't share anything. Um, or you can do like smaller pieces, like smaller personal pieces, if you have the time, and post those and use that for quote unquote content in the meantime.
Speaking of social media, you have two Twitters.
I do.
What? Yeah, bless you. Because I can just say right now, with all my socials, I can't. I tried. So for the Quip and Quill podcast, I tried to have another Twitter and
Mm,
Instagram and Facebook, and that died extremely quickly because I do not have that bandwidth.
mm.
With everything you do you post every day on both of them?
No.
Or okay.
So what I do, I have my main Twitter, which is at Nalawu, NALAWU. That is my Twitter main. That's where I post every day usually. And it's not a professional Twitter, it's just me. It's my I post about my AP work there too, so I guess it's more my like public facing content creation account, I guess.
Right.
My art Twitter is Nala Draws, and I only post my art there. So, one of the big draws that I tell people is that you can go turn post notifications on for that account because I'm not retweeting like other people's stuff. I'm not spam posting. Like, I literally only post about my work there, or I will occasionally retweet stuff that is specific to art, or I will write threads that are, again, specific to art. I'm pretty sure I have a Twitter thread on that account that I wrote about common art commission scams that are very common on Instagram. And now, for some fucking reason, through LinkedIn, people are getting scammed. Um, or you're just getting emails, like email scams. So I wrote a thread about the common phishing scams that are targeted to artists, and basically as a PSA, like, hey, if you get any of these sort of things, like, watch out, because those are very common art scams. And it's very unfortunate and quite sad that artists are being targeted because people are vulnerable. People are seeking commission work, and they will take stuff that seems too good to be true. And it's like, no, that's a scam. And it's a very well-known scam at this point. So I had written like a PSA, for example, as just something that's related to art there. I'll post like my art calls there. So like when I'm art directing and I have projects that I'm hiring for, I typically will post it on that account and then boost it from my main, which has a significantly higher following than my art account. But yeah, that's how I use Twitter. And the reason I split off into two Twitters is because I noticed that on my main account, my art wasn't getting a lot of attention or engagement. And that was kind of frustrating for me. Not that it gets more engagement on my separate account, but at least in my mind, I'm sort of like, the people who follow my art account want to see my art, and they will engage with my art there. But my main, I keep it just not as related to that, just so I can have that sort of separation for myself. And again, allow people to turn on post notifications for my art Twitter because they know and I know that I'm only going to be talking about my artwork there.
Do you have a Patreon?
I do not.
Okay. Um, because, again, we're all going through this whole we're all in the same boat together with
Yeah.
social media just shitting all over us.
I do have a Ko-fi or coffee or whatever. So I have
Yep.
that. I have Venmo. So if you liked anything of what I said today, if you learned something, if you want to tip me for that, I have those methods. My Venmo is at Nal, NAL dash WU at Null I do not know why it's not Nala Woo, but it's just been Null this whole time. The picture is me holding a lot of money from my freshman year of college. I thought that would be a very funny picture to have on my
Perfect.
Venmo. So that's the picture. I look like a mafia boss counting some dollars. So you can tip me there if you'd like. I also have a coffee, which is ko-fi.com or whatever /knowledgedraws. I'm currently crowdfunding the rest of my trip to Big Bad Con, so that's what I'm currently raising funds for on there. And yeah, so I don't have a Patreon, but those are other ways that you can support me monetarily besides hiring me. I do art direction, I can draw stuff for you, I also do layout and graphic design work. So I love doing hand-drawn title designs and that sort of thing, as well as voice acting, sensitivity consulting, or get me on your APs. Let me be a guest antagonist. I love playing the villain. That's so much fun.
Me too.
Or main cast. My schedule frees up come July-ish for longer term projects. If you don't know about my AP work, I am someone who loves dressing up, so I dress up for literally everything, just because I like to. I love makeup, I love fashion. And then like one other thing I guess I'll randomly plug is that I do fashion illustration. So I have a background in fashion illustration, and if you want me to design cool outfits for your characters, would love to do that. Especially if you have your characters attending a gala or a ball or a formal event. My bread and butter of fashion design is formal wear, so I would love to design cool outfits for your characters, and I can do them in a very nice fashion illustration style.
So I'm just going to say, for every artist out there who, whenever I have conversations with them and they're like, oh, I can't just randomly ask people to put stuff in my tip jar. I feel like I'm spamming every time I talk about my stuff. I would like to point out how perfectly nice and easy that just flowed into everything with Nalia. And yeah, you absolutely can. Nothing they said sounded like they were begging for money, asking people to put stuff in your tip jar, asking people to hire you, telling them what you do, sharing your Amazon wish list. People.
Oh yeah, I have that. I share my Amazon
Great.
wish list every holiday. Like I don't do it on my
Same.
birthday. I ask for like Ko-fi and Venmo on my birthday if you feel like giving me something for my birthday, which is July 12th, by the way, allegedly. I actually don't know my real birthday. But during the holiday season,
you cannot leave it at that.
During the holiday season, I often people are actually ask me like, "Hey, do you have a wish list? Like, can I send you a gift?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Sure." So I have an Amazon wish list that I update every holiday season. So
Yeah.
that you should not feel bad about asking people to support you, because that's something that I definitely have a long experience or a long relationship, I guess, with, as someone who has been posting my art to the public eye ever since I turned 13 and was allowed to use social media. I have been sharing of myself online. I know very well what it means to be a person that has a very public facing persona, or a content creator, or an influencer, whatever you call it. I graduated high school with 50,000 followers on Instagram, so like I know a little thing or two about marketing yourself on social media.
Just a little.
Just a little. And content creation is work. Like even if you don't view it as content creation, like people are out here quote unquote consuming your quote unquote content for free. And I don't think it is out of place at all to say like, hey, if I've ever taught you something, if you appreciate my work, if you want to support me, like buy me a coffee. It's $3 or
Right.
whatever. even though coffees nowadays cost like $7.
Right? I mean, you can change the prices too on
Yeah, you can. You
Kofi,
can.
Kofi coffee. I don't know what the fuck to call it
I
either.
don't know
So,
how they pronounce it. All I can guarantee you is that however the company decides they want to pronounce it is wrong.
right? It's like
People will
Wacom.
decide. Yes,
Wackham's
Wacom.
like Wacom. No, no,
Wacom.
no, no. It's
No, it's
Wacom. I'm not
Wacom.
gonna call him
You're
Wacom.
wrong. Yeah, no. Who's calling it Wacom? Like, I'm not gonna whack them.
Right? That's an expensive tablet. I'm not fucking whacking a goddamn thing about it. No, no.
So true. Wacom.
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with plugging yourself, and I will do it shamelessly. Because
Same.
as a multiple marginalized person who exists on the internet, who gets sent hate just because I am someone who is visibly marginalized on the internet, I'm like, yeah, no, I'm exhausted. Like, being a person who is constantly advocating for positive change in the industry and who gets harassed for it, yeah, no, like, I put out a lot of, like, I try to educate people and to call out bad behavior in the space, only so that I can help push us towards a space that is safe for multiple marginalized people to exist in. I think being someone who is a person of color, who is trans, who is queer, disabled, neurodivergent, all of these things, there are struggles and challenges that I have to face that other people just don't. And I think, I don't want to like preach to the choir here, but as a person of color, uh, it is a fact that POC often have to work twice as hard and be twice as good to get the same amount of recognition or even consideration from from people as our white peers. And that's just a
Exactly.
fact. And it is deeply frustrating. But hey, that's systemic racism for you. And I think what people don't like talking about is that racism is so far ingrained into our society that it's not just people, yelling slurs at you online, which obviously that is a huge thing, but racism also is inherent biases. It is assumptions that you make. It is very, very small things that even the most well-intentioned white ally might be doing unintentionally, and that's just how far deep ingrained it is into our society. And so even just being working in this space since 2019, I'm like, yeah, I have noticed patterns of behavior and just patterns in industry that show that there is this space has a long way to go. And
Absolutely.
everything that I do is to try to make it better for everyone, but
I
especially
am,
people like me.
as a white person, I'm going to absolutely say you don't get white people, you don't get the right to call yourself an ally. Someone else needs to call you that. You don't get to say I'm an ally. That isn't your place. That's not your right.
Yep. Allyship is a verb. It is active. You have to actively be showing allyship. It is not a label you can put on yourself. Take ally out of your bios, please. That is so cringe. It is so like
Yes.
white liberal of you to have ally in your bio. Because again, it is not a label that you can assign to yourself. It is an action that you take to uplift and support marginalized people, to use your voice and your platform to support people with less privilege than you. It is
Yes.
active. It is not a static term. And I hope that everyone is aware that allyship is ongoing. It is something that you are constantly working towards, myself included. I am always learning about you know myself and others in the space, people with even less privilege than I, um, learning about all of these issues in the space that uh, are very important, because I think all work is political, whether you want it to be or not.
Mm-hmm.
My work is political because of my perspective and who I am, and the things that I stand for politically. My perspective as a multiple marginalized person who exists informs my work and
Yes.
changes how I work. And you will see those influences in my work. And it is something that I stand by. It is something that I am aware is a turnoff for certain people. But at the same time, if you don't want to hire me because I am out here with even the most basic ass stances like, trans people deserve rights.
Yep.
People deserve bodily autonomy. Gay people should be able to get married, right? Like bare basic stuff, right? Like if you don't want to work with me because that's what I believe, then I don't want to work with you. Like you don't deserve me. You
Right.
can like, and uh I think that's something that a lot of people want to shy away from. They say like, "Oh, I don't care about politics. I want to keep politics out of it." And like, unfortunately, neutrality is a political stance. To
Yes.
stay neutral is a political stance. So that's why I am so loud and so vocal about my views,
Mhm.
because it is important as someone with a platform that I have to be loud and vocal.
I not too long ago had somebody we had a very similar conversation where they were like, "Well, if I say anything online, then I'm not going to certain companies." Okay, I don't understand the problem. If somebody's not going to hire me because I believe in human rights, I don't want to fucking be hired by those people.
Exactly. Free Palestine, right? I've been saying that so loudly for a very long time. And very recently in the TTRPG space, we I called out some people who are Zionists and who were posting some Islamophobic stuff. And they were called out. And it's something where I'm just like, it sucks, but also like, I don't want you in my space. If you are a Zionist, do not hire me. If you are a Zionist, get out of my spaces. I do not want to share space with you. And I hope that you can educate yourself and learn, and look to other anti-Zionist Jewish people, because there's plenty of them who exist. Um, and I want you to learn and grow. I want you to take that time, but do it away from me. I don't want you in my space when you're doing that. And taking that political stance is important because of who I am. My existence has been made political, and I hate that it is that way, but it is. And as much as other queer people want to deny it, like, it sucks that my gender is politics, but that's what it is, and I will not stop fighting for what I believe in.
I mean, right now, every female body is now political. We're having our rights, stripped from us. Everybody who is in the queer community, LGBTQ+, all of us, whether we want to admit it or not, we're political. We've always been political. We've
Yep.
been murdered for who we are. There's never been a point. They have to make laws to, quote unquote, allow us to not be murdered, to not be discriminated against. There's no way that you cannot be political and queer. It
Yeah.
just, unfortunately, it'd be great, but that's not reality. And I understand there's a lot of people who it is a lot. There's a whole lot going in the world. And it's nice to be able to not have to deal with it and maybe ignore people on socials or not talk about it yourself on socials. That's awesome, but that is also called privilege.
Right. If you have the privilege to not have to talk about politics, to not have to defend your right to exist, that's privilege. And
Yes.
I know that this episode's coming out in June. It is Pride Month, so happy Pride,
Yes.
everybody who's listening to this.
Yay.
Please know that we get to have a Pride Month because of Black trans women.
Yes.
We owe pride to them, so
Wouldn't have it without them.
Exactly. Please, if you're queer, learn our history. Learn about the AIDS epidemic. Learn about all of these things in our history. On June 12th, 2016, that was the Pulse shooting in Orlando.
Yes.
That was on June 12th, 2016, which is almost 10 years ago. It is, 8 years ago now.
Yeah.
I remember when that happened. It's stuff like that. Like we need to learn where we came from so that we can move forward. And this Pride Month, I hope that we can focus on ourselves, lifting ourselves up, lifting up our most vulnerable members, because disabled queer people exist. They deserve to have Pride events that are accessible for them.
Your host is a disabled queer.
Exactly. We need to be masking in public because that
Yes.
is community care. That is so important. We cannot be leaving disabled people out of our queer spaces. And so masking during an active pandemic, people are still dying of COVID, by the way.
Yes. Hasn't gone away.
Is so important. And I hope that to anyone who's listening to this, that you think about all of these things. Like I do not mean to come on here and be like, I'm better than you for doing all these things, or that you are a bad person if you haven't considered all of these things. That is absolutely not what I'm trying to say. I'm coming at this from a place of love, from a place of someone who is desperately hoping that the industry and the space that I inhabit can be better.
It is Pride Month, and so I absolutely want to say that if you do play Idle Champions, I have a lovely little familiar. Miss Squiggles is now in the game. I'm so incredibly happy about that. And any purchase of her as a familiar helps go towards Lambert House for Pride. Lambert House is a community center for sexual, transgender, and questioning youth in the greater Seattle, Washington area. They are actually extremely, they work with volunteers, they work with Pride, they help a lot of, they have tons of youth programs that allow people to find safe spaces where we normally would not, and help people not only in the US, but worldwide. So super proud of doing that. So yeah.
Go support that. If you have disposable income,
right.
Instead of giving it to a corporation that's going to have a rainbow profile picture for this month and then change it after the month is over, go donate to mutual aid funds that directly go support queer people, or give your queer friends your money, like me or anyone else.
I will take your money too.
Yeah. Give Devin and Jay your money.
Right. If you want something in return, I have a bunch of Pride designs and everything else on my website, which is devinrue.com. I have it specifically for Pride, and I think this year I did the chaotic queer is my favorite alignment. So I made a bunch of designs with that. This is a quick little reminder that this podcast is sponsored by our patrons over on Patreon, and you'll find the link for that in the description below, as well as Legend Keeper, a fantastic tool that I am constantly talking about. Whether you are an author, a player creating a wiki, or a GM creating a campaign setting, and you want to stay organized with timelines, maps, articles, NPCs, and so much more, Legend Keeper is a fantastic tool to do just that. Use the code QUILLKEEPER during checkout and get 1 month free. And again, the link for that will be in the description. Thank you so much for listening. And now, back to the podcast. Oh God, I don't even know where to start with this one, because one, I think it's very important. And two, I think that a lot of, especially smaller creators, think that they can't afford it or technically don't need it simply because it, like, a great example is I am doing my tarot card project, and I would like to possibly have you come on and do some reading for me, even though there's hopefully not anything in it that actually needs what most people consider a sensitivity reading for, because it's not like it's a setting, but I don't think people understand what it actually is and why it's beneficial even to smaller projects. Would you care to explain what it is exactly, instead of, like, the standard everyone thinks it's, well, I didn't write anything racist, so I'm good, right?
Yeah. So yeah, let me as a sensitivity consultant, different consultants do things differently. For me, I have a list of topics that I feel comfortable reading for because all of my consulting work is based off of my own lived experience. So what you're paying for is me as someone who's multiple marginalized. Will is able to look at your stuff and see if anything stands out to me as potentially being insensitive or just straight up being wrong and bad. And it is my job as a consultant to flag any potential things and give you tips and pointers as to what you can shift the language to, or how you can improve your writing or your art, because you can also hire consultants for your art. That is something that people don't know, but that's something that I offer as an art director, is that I will be able to flag any potential issues and either work it out myself with the artist, or let you as a client know, like, hey, we should run this by a sensitivity person or a sensitivity consultant. But yeah, so my job is basically to do a like a almost final pass at your work and be able to flag anything that that potentially might need to be changed before it is released to the public. And I agree that a lot of people think, oh, I don't need that. But I think it's better to be safe than sorry, especially if you, as a person, don't intend to hurt anybody. I think the worst thing that can happen is that you put out something that you're so very proud of, and then you unintentionally offend a group or a marginalized community when you didn't even mean to. And that's something that can easily be caught by hiring a sensitivity consultant. I've worked with small indie creators all the way up to Andrew McNeil or Andrews McNeil Publishing, major publishing houses, to look over comics, to look over scripts. I've looked over art. I've looked at. I got hired by a couple GMs to look over their session notes to see, like, am I handling this storyline appropriately? I've been hired to look at art, like, hey, like, can you take a look at my character design? How can I improve it and make it better? I've consulted on character backstories. I've consulted on books and that sort of thing. So, like, I think if there's one thing I want to say, like, you can expand what sensitivity consulting is and what it can be used for, because it's not just for books. It can be for pretty much anything. And no project or product is above potentially needing a consultant. So that's what myself and all these other wonderful consultants that I've worked with, that's what we're all here for. And that's basically the job, is you are paying someone to just double check your work and make sure that you're not putting anything out in the world that could be harmful to a group of people that you don't intend to harm.
Exactly. A fantastic example as to why a sensitivity consultant would be needed on our work is I have a lot of people who do, if you are doing illustrations of people that are not the same ethnicity, race, whatever, culture as you, absolutely. Whether it's the character's costume, whether you're feeding into a stereotype that you don't necessarily realize that you're feeding into.
Right.
Right. And there's it, again, it doesn't mean that you're a horrible person if you do it. It
all
could
about
just mean
learning.
you don't know.
It's all about learning, and I think there's
Right.
a difference between ignorance and willful ignorance. Because
Yes.
like people think that ignorant is a bad thing to be. And I would counter that being willfully ignorant is a bad thing to be. It's okay to
Yes.
be ignorant. I am ignorant of a lot of things. Ignorance, as like definition, is just defined as just not knowing something. And like, I don't claim to know everything in the world. There's a lot of things I'm still learning. There's a lot of things I'm still ignorant of. And I think as a society, we need to stop viewing ignorance as a negative trait. I view it
Right.
as a neutral thing. Where it gets bad is if someone is willfully ignorant and or are refusing or are closed off to learning more about people who are different from them.
Right. And I'm going to stress this. If somebody comes up to you and says, "Hey, I am of this culture, ethnicity, whatever, what you have drawn, written, etc., isn't accurate, is offensive, is not how we are, what we do." I don't care if it's one person. Absolutely fucking listen to them.
Yep.
Immediately contact a sensitivity consultant and confirm with them and then fix it. Please
Yeah.
do not get on and be overly defensive and get angry. If it's
And
ignorance.
don't ask that person who pointed it out to tell you why either. Like, you're asking for free labor.
Yes.
Either ask them if they do consulting and say like, "Oh, like, thank you for pointing that out. I wasn't aware of that before. Are you a consultant, and can I pay you for your time for you to educate me as to where and why and how I messed up and how I can make it better?" Don't ask for
Just
free labor from people.
right.
Or if someone is willingly offering you free labor, like not just saying, "Hey, this is bad," but maybe they make a thread explaining why it's bad, right? Like, offer them money for their time, like offer them money for their free labor that they just put out into the world. Um like, you should be compensating people for their time, especially for the emotional labor of explaining to people why something is offensive. Like, that can be an incredibly emotionally charged conversation to have. And so that's why consulting costs money, and that's why you should be paying people for their time.
Exactly. And it's also why a lot of commenters sound angry.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily that they hate you and think that you're purposefully being, insensitive or racist or ableist or whatever. It's just simply that after a while you just get really tired of the same things over and
Yeah.
over again.
The
And
space makes the same mistakes over and over and over
yes.
again. And I I I joke about this all the time. I have a bingo card that I have for the
Mhm.
TTRPG space that I have been playing for like the past 2-ish years, maybe, that I've made it. I still have not released these bingo boards publicly. I am very close to doing so. I need to finish like formatting them and figuring out how is best to release to the public, because the
Right.
last thing I want is to be accused of making light of a serious situation. But let me just say, there is a repetitive pattern of discourse in the space, and it is exhausting to
Yeah.
be observant of it repeating over and over and over and over again. So keep watching my socials. I will be releasing them at some point. I just need to figure out like how best to do it, because again, I don't want to offend anybody by making light of serious situations and rightful valid call outs of abusive people in the space, for example. So I need to
Yeah.
time it at a time when there's no current discourse, basically.
How is that even possible?
It's possible. There was a small window of time earlier this year that looking back, I'm like, man, I should have released it then.
All right.
But like, I'm just sitting on it right now. We'll see. We'll see.
Also, this means please stop making blind characters with pupilless iron white eyes. Please stop. Please
Mm,
stop. I
that's a
can't
trope.
stress this enough. I
That's a
fucking
trope.
hate this so much
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Yeah. All white eyes, all black eyes, super cool. But when you notice what kinds of characters happen to have those character traits, then you're like,
Right.
maybe not.
Right. Yeah, not so much.
Yeah.
Please stop making things C4 blind people. I get it. I understand. And for the most part, I don't, not to say that I get offended, because it happens. However, it is the same thing over and over and over again. I have a wonderful blog post that talks about how to respectfully make visually impaired to blind player characters that, again, I am one person talking from my experience. There's
Right.
plenty of people out there that are like me that will absolutely chime in. And I actually talked to numerous other people that play in the space that are also visually impaired to fully blind. And we all kind of like took a good once over and added, added their own commentaries and everything else into it.
Yeah.
So we could put something out that was a little bit less harsh than I was originally gonna write it.
I think it's important to also know that no one person speaks for an entire group. Like, even
Yeah.
within marginalized groups, people are gonna disagree, and so it's up to you ultimately to decide how best to navigate the space. And so, like, I'm very upfront as a consultant. Like, I tell my clients upfront all the time, the feedback and advice that I am giving you, I am speaking from my own personal experience, my own lived experience as a multiple marginalized person. That is the perspective that you are paying for. I am not here to tell you how to be right or wrong or whatever. I am just giving you my own lived experience. That is what you are paying for. And it's up to you to decide what of my feedback you're going to take and what you're going to leave. I absolutely encourage you go get a second opinion from people, especially if you disagree with something that I'm saying. But that is what I do, and that's how I do this.
Yes. And the other thing is like, especially with within the disabled community, I am going to specify everybody who is disabled and a part of the disabled community does not have the same experience, nor are we all similarly disabled. Please do not speak for a disability you do not have. Don't consult on it unless you are actually a trained consultant who has done the work in the community. Because that is why the experience is there. That is why there are people that go out and collect this information and research and put in a lot of the time and effort to learn other people's experiences and learn to express them in a way that is more encompassing for the overall experience of people in the community. And that is important than just going, well, I talked to like two of my friends that wear glasses, so I think I'm good on talking to somebody in the blind community. No. A perfect example is I had somebody and this is very common, is for people to take sight canes away from us and use them as a weapon. I'm going to turn it into a sword or something. Don't do that. That's our mobility devices. That is how we navigate the world. Please stop doing that.
Yeah.
And I confronted somebody about it, and they're like, oh, well, I talked to a couple of the people who are, in the community, and they said it's fine. Okay, that's great. Are any of these people cane users?
Yep.
Because I can't imagine that and again, there may be, again, I'm only speaking my experience, but I mean, if this is the thing that I need to figure out if I'm going to walk into something or if I'm going to trip over something, why would I ever want to take it out of my hands and put it in a different use?
Yeah.
Also, I'm going to point this out because I am also someone who plays with swords. Aluminum is not a good sword. just gonna point that out, that those sight canes they're light. They're meant to give us a lot of feedback. They make horrible weapons. Please stop doing that. I mean, I just envision all of our canes breaking.
Yeah. I just think of aluminum foil.
Right.
That's what I think of. Aluminum is specifically a very lightweight metal.
Right. Like
if you have a sword, that
right.
the job of it is that you swing it, you gather momentum, and then it's supposed to cut a bitch.
Right. You need something solid,
something heavier. Yeah.
Right. And even sight canes that aren't folding, because the foldable ones are even worse. Definitely don't use those as a weapon. The solid ones are still, again, we are looking for something that gives us feedback. And I know that a sighted person doesn't necessarily know what that means, but it means that the cane will like roll over or tap onto something, and the impact vibrates back to the handle and it informs us to the surface or the area that we're making contact with. And that's what I mean by the feedback for it. So, it needs to be really lightweight and able to, communicate that. You can't pick up a piece of wrought iron fence and tell me how much it's going to tell you about anything. All right. So, yeah. There's people in this community. Please go pay them to do it.
Yeah. And that's also something like that differentiates consultants from just like the average person who might be giving you feedback, is that like as a consultant, I have honed my skill on being able to give constructive feedback to someone who's asking me for help.
Right.
I know how to communicate with them to best express like, hey, this is a little iffy and here's ways that you can fix it. Like, and that's all part of the job. And it's something that you can definitely get into and start getting better at, so you can start taking clients if you are listening to this and are interested in being a sensitivity consultant. But it's definitely something that like you can't just start doing it, right? Like
Right.
it's something that takes just a little bit of training, I would say, just a little bit. Like I think in order to be a good consultant, you need to have strong writing skills, so that you are able to communicate your ideas and your thoughts and feelings to clients, and not just flag it and say this is wrong and bad. You should probably be explaining why, because that's what they're paying for, and then giving them options to move forward.
Right.
Because I think the worst thing you can do as a consultant is just say, yeah, all of this sucks, throw it out, and then don't offer any alternatives or any tips on how to improve the work. Because at the end of the day, you shouldn't be antagonistic to your clients. You should work with them, because they're hiring you to help them make their product better. And so I would never just straight up be like, hey, this sucks. Like if it does suck, then I'll be straight up and say, hey, this sucks, but here's all the steps you can take to make it not suck, because that's what you're hiring me for.
Right. And this is why I had a friend of mine ask whether or not I would consider being a consultant. And I was like, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't know how to be, I do know how to be nice about things. I don't know how to necessarily be diplomatic about things. I tend to be a little, not necessarily harsh, but it's just a good thing I don't. It's just better I'm not a consultant.
Yeah.
I did, however, want to talk to you about commission scams.
Okay, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. So one of the things that, oh God, I don't even know where to begin with. I'm gonna ask you to, simply because if you've already have experience, it's a lot easier to send people to what you've already got out there. And the other thing is that I actually don't get that many. And I think it's also because of the filtering process that everyone has to go through to even hire.
I will read off of the tweet that I made. Okay.
Perfect.
So So beware of commission scams. This is a list of common phishing scams, most common on Instagram. You also will get these as emails. If in doubt, ask for payment up front and do not start until the money clears or processes. Do not take payment via check unless the client is a known established company, because that's how the phishing scams work.
Right.
So here's common ones. These are typically on Instagram, but I've seen them. I get them via email and I get them on LinkedIn now, which is weird. So these are people who will DM you and they will ask for any of the following. Can you draw a pet for a child's birthday? Can you draw my child as a cartoon superhero, like a 5-year-old as Spider-Man? Is usually paired with like my kid has cancer or some other sob story. This one is an email. Quote, I'm a disabled event organizer doing an academic workshop and I'll pay your fees up front. I hope my disability doesn't affect our conversation. That is a known scam. They will be trying to appeal to your empathy and will try to make you feel bad for them. That is a scam. It's usually also like a COVID workshop, which is really weird because like you have to think logically, like why would anyone be running a COVID workshop now when the general public doesn't fucking care?
Right.
Like they haven't, you gotta update the scams, y'all. Draw a picture for my son for his birthday next week that quote has his name written. They also DM you a piece of yours and ask for a commission in that same style, and they ask if they can pay via check. In general, anyone who wants to pay via electronic check or say they can't use PayPal for whatever reason, and they suggest mailing a check instead. Someone who claims, quote, we're paying from our child's savings account, which what? Huh? What? Huh?
Don't steal from your kids.
Yeah, when they send you too much money via PayPal or check or whatever, and they ask for the difference back, do not send them any money back. If someone, quote unquote, accidentally sends you too much, you need to tell them to go through PayPal channels or whatever to dispute that. Do not pay them back. And this is not always, but the scams will typically offer you $300 up front as a quoted price or a budget. Be wary if the offered $300 is paired with any of the stuff that I've mentioned. Basically, how these phishing scams work is that they'll send you a check or they'll PayPal you either for way higher than the stated amount that you agreed on, or they pay you and then they suddenly have an emergency, and that's why people will have some sob story about someone having cancer, or they ask for a pet portrait and then, oh no, I have vet fees or whatever. And either way, they will ask for their money back or some of their money back. And the earlier sob story is meant to make you feel bad, so that you'll feel bad, and it'll appear that the payment went through, but a couple days later, their payment is void. And now you're out whatever amount you paid them of your real money. So, for example, someone says, "I'll pay you $1,000 to do these illustrations for a corporate workshop," and you're like, "Okay, great." And they're like, "And we'll pay you up front." You're like, "Okay, great." So they pay you the $1,000. Great, and then you get a message back saying, "Oh, the event was canceled, and we don't have budget or whatever, so I don't want to waste your time, so can you at least give us 400 of the $1,000 back?" And you're like, "Okay, like sure, like I know I only barely started on the art anyways, so sure, I will refund you a little a little under half the money, sure." So you pay them back the $400, and then bam, the check actually is bounced or whatever. The money isn't processed, and now you are out the $400 that you paid them back, because none of that money coming in was real money in the first place. That's kind of how these things work, and I hope that makes sense. Similarly with like the child with cancer, they'll be like, "Oh, yeah, can I pay you this much money up front, and then, oh, I have doctor fees, I would like to cancel the commission, can you pay the money back?" And you pay the money back, and then the money that they paid you doesn't end up clearing, and now you're out 300 of your dollars. For example, is kind of how these things work. With the PayPal scams, they'll send you an email like that is meant to look like it's from PayPal demanding the money back. It's going to look fishy. You should not click on links sent in that email. Tell them to open a dispute via PayPal's official channels. They will threaten legal action, but that is meant to scare you to pay them. They have no ground to walk on. Tell them to go through PayPal to get their money back, because in reality, they never actually paid you anything. That's the important thing to know. They never actually paid you any real money. After a week or so or whatever, the money is going to bounce and you will not have been paid anything. And if you pay them back, you are out your real money. Okay. And I say this in the thread, never pay them back. This is how they get you. All of these are elaborate phishing schemes targeting younger or newer artists who are just trying to find commissions and find work in this hellscape. So please be vigilant. The LinkedIn scams that I'm seeing now is people emailing you or messaging you via LinkedIn saying like, oh, I'd love to interview you for a job or whatever. And actually, I'm not sure how those scams work, because everything, like, I'm so suspicious now. I've never like actually almost been duped by any of them, but I would look up like LinkedIn scams or job scams, because everyone knows that all of these people, like, the job market is ass right now. So it's very easy for people to prey on young people, especially those who are looking for their first job out of school. There's a lot of job scams, and you need to think, like, if you were getting messaged by someone who allegedly works at a company and is allegedly hiring for a company, like, definitely look them up. Look them up on LinkedIn, look them up at the company itself, and see if the company has, like, on the official company website, have they posted the job that they're allegedly hiring for? If that job is not listed, I would be so fucking wary. Like, you gotta like double check everything. Does this person actually exist? Be wary if they're asking you to talk on Telegram. That is scam. If it seems too good to be true, be wary. A lot of these scams will be like, oh, we want to pay you $50 an hour for this job, and it starts next week. Are you available? And it's like, no, what? Like use your brain. Think. Did you apply for the job in the first place? If you never applied and you get an email saying, oh, we're reaching out to you about this position that you applied for, if you didn't apply to that, be wary. Like, it's just a lot of it is common sense, but unfortunately, common sense is actually not that common. So just use your brain. Think about, did I apply for this? Is this a real job? Can I fact check this, that this is a real job that exists? And then if all of those other things seem true, because again, these scams have gotten so creative and so tricky, I would reach out on LinkedIn to someone else at the company and say, hey, I've been reached out by so and so, who may or may not be a real person who works at the company, and reach out to them, say, hey, like, I've been reached out that so and so is recruiting for X position with X title at the company. Could you please confirm that this is real? And get a second or even third confirmation from someone else who works at the company. Go via a different channel, not the LinkedIn message that you get or the email that you get. Like, find someone else at the company to confirm that this is a real job, and don't move forward unless you hear back and get that confirmation.